Hello and welcome to my 5th episode from KSP Mission to Jool. Now our next objective will be Pole, the most outest planet, and what I did is I finally had the chance to update to the newest version of the game, so you might see some changes in the UI and some other changes are happening, like I got the distant object mod, which shows planets further away as little stars. And it messed around a little bit with some of my settings, so I had to fix a few things. As you can see, I started out with landing gear. I even haven't set up all of my buttons yet for the toolbar. And yeah, but pretty much you can update all of these mods now and they work pretty well together. And actually the game works a lot better than it did before, but I still have to muck around a little bit with the settings because I realized that I'm recording at a lot less frames per second and therefore the picture looks a little bit laggy. However, all of this will be sorted out for the last episode, I'm pretty sure. So here we're just collecting the last bit of science, checking if everything is ready, and then we're heading off to Pole. So it's just standard maneuvering. As you remember from the last episode, we set up already our escape, and we're gonna have an encounter soon with Pole. Well, actually we still have to make a correction burn, but yeah. Here I was just seeing if all of the carbon dioxide extractor and just everything in the ship is still working, because as I have experienced before, I had some issues when changing mods or updating things, and we had some issues before with the reactor, and therefore, yeah, double checking is always a good idea. So here just basic maneuvering to get to Pole. There we had it again, that the reactor shut itself down, but yay, this time it did not frack up and it's actually working, so yay! Yeah, I time accelerated a lot in this episode because you've seen me land on non-atmospheric planets before, and I want to cut this short. I want to document it, but I want to cut it short, and that's why a lot of this is time accelerated. Not only because I want to keep it interesting, but also, as I said before, I had issues with the frames per second that I'm recording with, so I actually had to speed up a lot of the footage so it wouldn't look that laggy. Okay, so we finally got into a stable orbit. We still have more than enough fuel for everything we want to do. And let's just open this up and collect all the science. Now, as I said before, the best way to do this is if you have a lab with you, is if you collect all the science once, process it, send it home, and then recollect it and bring the physical data back home. So in the end, you'll have always a little bit of boost while your ships are out and about, and once they get back, you get that extra amount of science that you would otherwise not get. So that's the best way to leech out the most out of one mission. And yeah, here is me just mucking around with all the science, moving it back and forth, processing it, sending it on the way. Cool part about updating the game is that it runs a lot more smoothly, even though I have issues recording it with less frames per second. I might have to lower the graphics settings again, but I'm very happy that now with all these mods installed, it actually runs better than it did before. So yeah, let's just collect all that science here, and as I said before, we're bringing it all into the capsule, well, the cockpit, to bring back home the Kerbin. Okay. Yep. And send the first batches of science away. Alright. So, just a little bit more here. And whoop. Okay. There we go. I finally figured it out how I can get into the cockpit without messing around too much and the carbon's trying to float away, but sometimes it still seems a little bit buggy. Okay, now let's get into the lander. Let's check if everything is... Nope, it wasn't. I did not reset the materials bay and the mystery goo containers, so we'll have to get the carbon back here and reset all the science. Okay, and we're checking if all of the lander is refueled. Yeah, that should be more than enough. And let's get ready. Let's get down to pole. Just turn on the toggle the torque, and so we have an easier way of getting out without using that much monopropellant, even though, as I said before, we have more than enough on board. And once again, we kind of have to nudge our way out of the vehicle with leaving a lot of scrapes in the cargo bay. Set ourselves up. And once again, just basic landing on a non-atmospheric planet. Turning on the engines. We're already set up on the right course. And decelerate. Well, we're actually accelerating to decelerate our orbit. Pole has a very, very low gravity, so I really didn't have a problem landing here, just with the 2 atomic engines. And we were close enough for... the Independence was close enough to take all the near pole science. So what I can do right now is, when once I landed, is take all of the science from the surface twice to have the same effect as I said before. I can send the first batch processed through the lab to Kerbin, and then take the second batch as a physical file with me once we get back to Kerbin. So these landing lights really paid off. I mean, now that I'm landing on day sides of the planets, I don't really have an issue seeing the ground, but it was a really good idea to bring those lights along. If I would have had it to land on dark sides of planets, I would just be not so comfortable. Alright, so once again, we're just collecting all the science from all the little things we brought along. With the updating of the mods, I also made the seismometer work again, but what I have not done is I didn't bring one along. So I fixed it and I don't have it with me. But yeah. Also what is changed, that now I can actually take the data out of the B9 science package, the sensor pack and the atmospheric pack, and they don't need to be reset with the science lab, so that makes everything a lot easier. And here is the naming of our episode today: Gusly rules. Let's just be lame. I didn't really come up with anything better, so I just stuck with that. And just collect surface samples and get back into the capsule. Oh, actually, we should take all of the science before we get in, so we didn't have to do this once we're docked with the Independence again. Alright. And back in. Ooh, we even have a nice view of a planet back there, even though I can't see which one it is. Yeah. And yeah, we're actually good to go. Set up our target, and off we go again. Now once again, just standard maneuvering. The problem is, if you're in such a low orbit, you have a harder time trying to get an encounter without being so low that you cannot time accelerate in-game anymore, and therefore waste a lot of time. But for your convenience, all this is time accelerated and much more fun to watch. And here I was just trying to make a suicide maneuver to get as close to the Independence as possible without having to wait another orbit for setting up an encounter. I'm just really lazy like that. I don't like waiting too much around, and if I have that much fuel, I can do this. And somehow the Independence lost electrical charge again. So yeah, this is quite buggy. Just having a ship run on a reactor while you're not playing somehow seems to be messing around. So once again, just setting up a docking sequence here until I noticed that my settings are not set up right. So what I do and what I like is I set up in the staging, I set up my translations on the keypad because it just lets me orientate myself on the keyboard a lot better. And yeah, just had to set that up. And now getting back into the Independence is a lot easier. Normally the translation controls are somewhere, I think it's like J, H, U, K, and N or something, but I really like it on the numpad. It just makes it more convenient. Let's just call it convenient. Alright, so once again, just collecting signs, moving it around. I actually skipped part of these because it's just waiting for stuff to be processed and then sent back home and then collect it again and put it into the cockpit and so forth and so forth. And here you saw me collect the data from the sensor pack. And now we got everything out of the lander, processing it again ever so slowly, even time accelerated, and also just setting up the lander again, refueling it completely. And yeah, slowly checking everything. Alright, and seeing if we got everything. Now we still had to collect a few signs and put it in the cockpit. Okay, and once again processing, resetting all the signs, and now we're ready to head off to the last planet we're going to visit in the Jool system, and this is going to be Layeth. We still had to collect the high pole signs, that's why I had to set up a maneuver to get high over orbit, but from that on we used already the acceleration that we obtained, or I don't know how to say that, to get to Layeth. There we still have some signs to send, and yeah, accelerate a little bit more until we have escape velocity. There we go, and switch over for the next maneuver. So here we have to correct our orbit to arrive at Layeth. If you see, we have a window of opportunity to get back to Kerbin within 6 days. So I had to make a very drastic maneuver to get to Layeth because I want to catch that window to get back to Kerbin. And just set ourselves another maneuver mode. Okay. Slowly. And carefully. Alright, and we have an encounter. Just getting it very, very low because I'm gonna use Layeth's atmosphere to aerobrake again. And seeing this in time acceleration, this is interesting that the independence wobbles so much. However, what you saw me doing there was I actually dumped all of the extra fuel that I don't need. So all of the oxidizer that was stored on the independence, I dumped because I want to have the independence be as light as possible for the landing in Layeth, just to make sure. And I also transferred a lot of the fuel to the front of the vehicle to make it more stable once I enter orbit. Even though I don't think I'm gonna have a problem because I built it very rigid and the control surfaces give me good control over it. So yeah, here we're going down for aerobraking. Opening all the aero brakes to take the maximum amount of deceleration out of it. Ooh, we have already some nice atmospheric entry effects. Ooh, and a nice view back there. Okay, and we're going up again, and we're still way too fast. So what I have to do is once again use the engine and the mass amounts of fuel that we still have to decelerate. Just flip it around and engage. I really like this engine, even though somehow the reactor kept messing around and was bugging me. However, maybe the next design of this will be better, even though after this we will actually have visited all the planets. Oh, actually we haven't. We would actually have to start a mission for Tylo and Eve. I still haven't made it to Eve. Well, I actually made it to Eve, but I never made it to land. So that could be future episodes or future missions. Alright, so we're just setting up ourselves with an orbit. I want to get into a stable orbit before I try to go in for a landing, because I have to check to see that I can land on land. Because Layeth has so much water, you actually have to look for the little patches of land everywhere. Well, the little islands actually. And here we're just collecting science again, sending it off. And what I want to do is we'll get the lander out so we have less problems with landing with it, because even though it's connected with the docking port and 2 of these struts, I have the feeling that this is not going to be stable enough for decelerating in thicker atmosphere, and it would freak out and be kind of a problem. So yeah, we're gonna leave the lander out in orbit and wait for the Independence to return. Or maybe she doesn't. Maybe we crash on the surface and all of this will be in vain. Let's just turn off the lights just to make sure. And yeah, that is it. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time.